of you here, those of you who are sitting with us at the Governor Hotel, and those of you listening on OPB or KBPS radio, and those watching on Portland Community Media's Sitting at 30. Thank you very much for joining us today, Friday, April 20th, for this week's forum. In consideration of those sitting close to you and the many thousands across Oregon in the radio and television audiences, I would ask you to please silence all of your devices. Today we will hear from Eileen Brady, Charlie Hales, and Jefferson Smith, three of the candidates running in one of the most competitive local elections in recent memory, the race to become Portland's next mayor. But first, a few announcements. City Club's corporate and media partners are essential to the vitality and the sustainability of all of the club's many activities. I'd like to thank our generous media partners, including Oregon Business Magazine. I would also like to extend our deepest appreciation to the Friday Forum's spring season corporate sponsors, ESCO Corporation, Mayoral Inc., Northwest Natural, and Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt. We are especially pleased to have representatives here today from Mayoral Inc. and Schwabe. If you could please rise so that we can acknowledge your contribution. And of course, for the others of you here in the room today, if you would like to join this august group in sponsoring the club's activities, please do see our friendly staff in the anteroom behind you. And now to introduce our moderator. Today's moderator is senior reporter Patrick Preston. Mr. Preston joined K2 in May 2011, specializing in coverage of government and politics. Patrick's assignments have taken him to cover Ground Zero in New York City, the aftermath of Hurricanes Ivan and Katrina, and the Iraqi War. He received an Emmy Award for his work as an embedded reporter in Kuwait and Iraq. We are extremely pleased to have him as our moderator today. Please join me in welcoming Patrick to the podium.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I really want to say thank you for inviting me to be here today, and it is a great privilege to host this debate, to serve as the moderator between the three candidates, the three leading candidates for Portland Mayor, Eileen Brady, Charlie Hales, and Jefferson Smith. First, let's go over the rules of today's debate. The debate will have several sections to start. Each candidate will give a 3-minute opening statement. Following opening statements, the candidates will respond to questions written in advance by City Club's Friday Forum Committee. Those questions selected by the committee are the only questions that will be asked today. There will be no questions from the floor. And I'll get a chance to ask my own questions at Sunday night's televised debate on K2. Now, as for the answers, we will rely on the judgment of the distinguished panel of City Club members seated at the table in front of me to decide if the candidates have indeed answered the question. If two or more of these members raise their question marks, and you can show us what it will look like there. If two or more raise the question marks, that indicates they feel a question has not been answered. I will restate the question and ask the candidate to reply again. The candidate will have only half that original time for the second try, but there will not be a third try. Now, on our panel, we have Lori Irish Bowman, Corleen Kraft, and Pat McCormick. Keeping time at today's debate is Tony Iaccarino. The candidates can see how much time is remaining, but just in case they go over, Tony will ring a bell to let them know it's time to wrap up. Following City Club's questions, each candidate will make a 2-minute closing statement. Please be respectful of the candidates. Please hold all applause until the end of the program. And now the candidates. Our first debater today is Eileen Brady. Ms. Brady is board chair of Solilo Group Media, publisher of the Chinook book. Ms. Brady was human resources director at Nature's Food Market, vice president of the Food and Farms program at EcoTrust, and an owner of New Seasons Market. She served as vice chair of the Oregon Health Fund Board and chair of Zenger Farms, as well as the Oregon Business Association Board and the Metro Blue Ribbon Bike Trails Commission. She was also board member and advisor to the Portland Sustainability Institute. Our second debater is Charlie Hales. Mr. Hales was elected to Portland City Council in 1992, where he served for 10 years, during which time he was commissioner in charge of the bureaus of Parks, Planning, Fire, and Transportation. Mr. Hales has spent the last decade working as a senior vice president at HDR Engineering, where he has consulted on streetcar use across the country. He is a board member at Friends of Trees. He's on the board of the Portland Parks Foundation, and he is part of the group working to add a year-round Portland public market to Portland's network of neighborhood farmers markets. Today's final debater is Jefferson Smith. Mr. Smith founded and directed the Oregon Bus Project to involve young people in voter registration and political advocacy. In 2008, he was elected to represent East Portland in the Oregon House and was re-elected in 2010. As legislator, he worked on a water investment program, the Cool Schools Retrofitting and Jobs Program, and the Grow Oregon Plan for homegrown Oregon businesses. He serves on the House Budget, Consumer Protection, Business, and Transportation Committees. And now I invite the candidates to take their podiums. One moment, please. We will begin with the opening statements. Ms. Brady, you will be first.
Thank you for this opportunity to spend an hour with the City Club. I appreciate the chance to be able to outline my case for why I would be the best prepared to be mayor of Portland. I arrived in Portland in 1986. I was 24. I had a young family, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, one on each hip, I used to say. I took a job for $5 an hour at Nature's Fresh Northwest. I've been a working mother, a sustainability pioneer, and a business leader. While I grew up in a political family, I'm not a politician. So the question you might have is, how will she lead this city? I offer to you my 25-year career in Portland, with a record of helping create thousands of jobs while maintaining our Portland values of equity and sustainability, of coalition building to solve complex problems, of never settling for business as usual, always pushing for new and better ways of getting things done. As Human Resources Director at Nature's and co-founder at New Seasons Market, I helped build a regional food system, creating good jobs with health benefits, and demonstrating that a culture of service in this day and age is still possible. As board chair of Zenger Farm in Outer East Portland, I helped lead the development of a landmark field trip destination for 5,000 children a year. And as board chair of the Chinook Book, I have helped develop a classic Portland small business, linking thousands of sustainability vendors to tens of thousands of customers. And as member of the Mount Tabor Independent Review Panel in 2004, I was part of the bold majority voting to recommend the City Council overturn their original decision to bury the reservoirs, saving taxpayers $400 million. As vice chair of the Oregon Health Fund Board, I helped bring together business, labor, and activists to pass a bill that today provides health care to 94,000 more Oregon children, almost every child in our state. I'm proud of each of these accomplishments. They're tangible proof that holistic thinking and a laser focus on outcomes can integrate our goals for jobs, the environment, and social justice. In the for-profit, the nonprofit, and public policy arenas, I have successfully built solutions to complex problems. The City of Portland currently suffers from a bureau-driven mentality that results in pet projects being funded, instead of key strategic investments being made to strengthen our economy and job base. I am running for mayor, not because Portland needs a mayor, but because we need a new kind of leadership. poised to create economic strength that we actually need to fund basic city services. It's not time to sit back and celebrate what we've gotten right in the past. We must move on to today's challenges, building a strong economy, creating a 21st century school system, and supporting our most vulnerable citizens. Experience matters. I bring my Portland ethic, my entrepreneurial approach, and my coalition-building orientation to this challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brady. Please hold your applause. And now, Mr. Hales, your opening statement.
I'm Charlie Hales, and I'm running to be your mayor. The question we need to answer today is, what does it take to be a successful mayor for Portland, and which one of us has what it takes? Being a successful mayor is not running a store or serving in the legislature. It's not about a healthy ego or having a lot of money, and it's not an entry-level position. The mayor of Portland first needs a set of values that matches our city. Then the mayor needs the ability to take those values and put them into action in our particular and peculiar form of government. The mayor of Portland then needs to have a proven track record of delivering the basics that make the city work. I'm the candidate for this office who has all three: the values, a habit of action, and a proven track record. When I served you as city commissioner, I was shocked that we had 3 women and 8 people of color in a force of 800 firefighters. So I hired the first fire chief from outside of the bureau, set up an apprenticeship program. Some didn't like it, but we overcame inertia, and now there are 168 women and people of color in our fire bureau. We're proud of it. We're better for it. A good mayor makes others into leaders. I'll do that as I help our police bureau refocus on community policing and change our training so it is not a reflex to shoot to kill when mental illness is involved. In parks, I led the team that passed the first parks bond measure in 50 years. I see a lot of people in this room that worked hard on that. We had strong feelings to overcome and opposition, but we worked hard to build agreement, and I brought people to solutions. I'll bring that same approach as we restore Forest Park to its intended glory. Running schools is not the job of the mayor, but everything we do depends on quality public schools. When we faced a previous budget shortfall, I worked with Mayor Katz and school leaders, and we got our teachers to donate time, and we did one-time grants that kept 4 weeks from being cut from our school year. That was controversial, but it was an emergency. A strong mayor comes through for schools even when it's hard. We need that kind of leadership even more now. Leadership is also the courage to prioritize what matters, like basic services, getting back to repaving streets and filling potholes. We need to get to the big ideas, but we get the basics right first. We need to take on water and wastewater rates. There's nothing clear in our charter that water rates must only benefit the water system and ratepayers, period. We need to do more with a tight budget. We have 1 manager for every 6 workers. We can get more dollars into basic services if we change the bureaucracy. That's not a job for a novice. I'll focus our city council on those basic services, and that will restore public trust and thus enable us to do the great things again. We're Portland. We're the best place. I will lead us in the basics and the big things. I want to say finally, a welcome to my wife Nancy and daughter Carolyn and son Gavin. Our family is doing this for all the families with whom we share this wonderful place. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Please hold your applause. Again, we ask you to hold your applause until the end of today's debate. Mr. Smith, your opening statement, please.
Thanks for having us. It is an honor to be before the City Club. Elections should be more than sales jobs to get a gig. They should be discussions about what a city can be and how together we can get there. Thanks for being part of that ethic. I'm Jefferson Smith, and I'm running for mayor because this is my hometown and we can make it better. To select a mayor, we need to select not only among us will be best suited to form a vision for the city, but to lead towards it. In our commission system, we do not hire a dictator nor a technocrat. We do not hire a train manager. We hire a servant leader. The most important asset that servant leader has is our people. The next mayor will need to build a great team. I have spent a decade identifying, recruiting, working with, and developing top talent, from senior and junior level staff and the governor, the mayor, and offices in the legislature, legislators themselves, advocacy groups from labor unions to business associations. We have a chance to put together the best team this city has seen in decades. The mayor needs a commitment to this place. I was born here. I went to public school here. I returned here. I am serving out my term even though it is hard. The mayor needs to see the whole city. I live in East Portland. As of today, I think we have had as many total joint appearances east of 82nd Avenue as we have had in this room. 80% of the students in my school district are on free or reduced price lunch. 73 languages are spoken there. The mayor needs to do the budget. I have budget experience in tough times. I serve on the Ways and Means Subcommittee, overseeing the budgets of the Governor, Secretary of State, and the Treasurer's Office. I championed budget transparency in Oregon and, in fact, carried the bill to do the trimming of middle management that Charlie just mentioned. I agree that we should do it, and you have to trust not only what I will say today, but what I have already done. I have shown discipline in avoiding promising sweeping tax breaks and avoiding promising major boondoggles and projects while we already face deep cuts. The next mayor will have to do politics. It is very popular to attack the legislature and even the political enterprise, but make no mistake, mayor of Portland is a political job, and we will have to build agreement without always wielding ultimate power. The next mayor will have to get things done, which I've done both as a successful nonprofit chief executive and as a legislator elected not only to the House, but elected and re-elected by my colleagues to House leadership. But ultimately, what we will need is you. Because what has made Portland great, what this club knows, what has made Portland great is not merely excellent leadership, but excellent citizen leadership. That is the thing I fear this city is losing. That is the thing we have to get back. I'm Jefferson Smith, and I'm running for mayor.
Thank you. And thank you for holding your applause until the end of the debate. Again, we appreciate you holding your applause. We now move to the portion of the program where I ask the questions prepared by the Friday Forum Committee. The candidates have not seen these questions in advance. Throughout the debate, candidates will have 60 seconds to respond. We will begin with a question to all three candidates, starting with Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, for the most part, you and the other two candidates here today appear to agree on many policy issues. What personal experiences or characteristics distinguish you, and why should we vote for you over your opponents?
The first thing I'll do is disagree with the initial premise of the question. There are key policy differences I hope we'll have time to cover. But beyond that, I'll offer the leadership case. When I got into the race, doing so knowing that my other two esteemed colleagues were already in, I knew it recognizing that there was one of us who had in fact started and run an organization of meaningful size, not only as an investor and a VP, but as the P, and had to manage the budget, manage the staff, and meet the objectives. I also recognized there was a candidate that could be in this race, that now is in this race, that had recent or current electoral experience, that understood what it was like to manage agreement not only during the 1990s, but during this decade, and in fact this century. That I recognized that my commitment to this place, that being committed to public schools, being committed to the whole city, being committed not only to folks who can write 3, 4, and even 5-figure checks, but even the least among us, is why I got into public service in the first place, why I'm running now, and what I will bring to the mayor's office.
Thank you, Ms. Brady. Your response?
You know, great cities have memorable park systems, they have regional transit systems, they have a strong neighborhood system with unique places you can explore. They have all of those things because they have a vibrant economic base and civic leadership to get them there. We can't just wish for parks. We can't just wish for a transit system. We actually have to build the underlying strength of the economy to get us there. The challenge of the day, the challenge of today's Portland is to build a job base, to build an economic engine so that we can have all of these things that we want in a livable city.
You'll have 30 seconds to answer the question one more time.
The dreaded question is, Marks. Could you please repeat the question?
Certainly. What personal experiences or characteristics distinguish you, and why should we vote for you over your opponents?
Thank you. So given that this is an economic engine that we need to build, I have worked in the private sector, I've worked in the nonprofit sector, literally, to create thousands of jobs. I will bring that experience to the top seat in our city.
Thank you. Mr. Hales, your response.
3 things I think I'd mention. I'm the son of a kindergarten teacher and a civil engineer. We spent a lot of time at home, my mother and I, watching the public affairs shows and debating the issues. So I learned about ideas and about community from her. And then my dad loved to fix things. And as Nancy will attest, that got passed down. And I like to fix things. So I'm a pragmatist who believes in community, thanks to my parents. Secondly, I came here, like a lot of people, by choice because Oregon is that best place. And I'm a passionate believer in what we've done in this state and this city with land use planning and smart growth. We're a model to the nation, and we should be proud. And then third, I've spent my whole life in one job or another thinking about life at street level in city neighborhoods. This isn't just something I thought about when this office became available. It's something I think about all the time. And the details and interactions of how cities work, sorry for a wonk like me, are fascinating.
Thank you. For this next portion of the debate, each candidate will answer one of the next three questions. The other two candidates will not get a chance to respond. This first question to Mr. Hales. Mr. Hales, the television show Portlandia satirizes our city's quirks, values, and general weirdness. Whether the show is a harmless spoof or a dangerous exaggeration is up for debate. But the program certainly contributes to how people across the nation view Portland. What do you believe is Portland's reputation across the country, and how does Portlandia positively or negatively affect our business competitiveness?
Well, I think you could probably say put a bird on it almost anywhere and get a response. I know what Portland's reputation is because I've spent the last 10 years helping cities all over the country follow our leadership. We are that model to the nation. There are delegations coming here every week from all over the world to figure out how to make their cities more livable places. So there is a serious side to our national reputation, and it's very good, and we've all worked hard together to make that real. And the thing I love about Portland is we did all those things to make this a better place for us, not a St. Louis Arch or a Space Needle to put us on the map, but we built a livable city and others noticed. Portlandia makes fun of us. I think we're big enough to handle that. I don't think it hurts our business climate, and it's a lot of fun.
Thank you. The next question to Ms. Brady. Mayors face unexpected challenges, from environmental disasters to health emergencies to even acts of terrorism. Of all the crises that might happen on your watch as mayor, which potential crisis keeps you awake at night? And if it were to happen, what would you do?
You know, it's the seismic danger that I think is most concern. As a matter of fact, when I met with former Mayor Tom Potter and asked for his endorsement, which he gave me, this was one of his top priorities. He wanted to make sure that the next mayor was very focused on that. So we have an opportunity to retrofit our existing commercial buildings. Not only will this help us with a seismic perspective, but it will also help us in managing our energy conservation goals that we're looking to achieve through our climate action plan. I have already said that I want to create a job corps for seismic and energy retrofits, and I will go to the federal congressional delegation to work towards building the funds to actually get that done. This keeps me up at night. I know it keeps many Portlanders up at night. It could happen in our lifetime, and we have to take it seriously.
Thank you. And to Mr. Smith, former Portland Mayor Bud Clark is known for his appearance in a poster reading "Expose Yourself to Art."
No.
I'm not finished. With a photograph of him apparently flashing a statue, as you well know. One could argue that this speaks to Mayor Clark's irreverent sense of humor as well as his commitment to community art. Which past Portland mayor most personifies the kind of mayor you aspire to be in both action and in value? And please offer a specific example from your career demonstrating that you share those qualities.
So when I think about role models, I typically don't take anyone whole hog, but try to glean lessons from different leaders. From Bud Clark, I do in fact take the understanding to express the zeitgeist of this town, the spirit of Portland, Oregon, maybe better than any mayor of the last 50 years. I don't expect I will do that as well, but I occasionally can have a laugh. I will not strip. Second, from Vera Katz, I understand the importance of political ability, to be able to build agreement within a political context. As a member of House leadership, I have had some experience in doing that. From our current mayor, Sam Adams, who has been beaten down more than he deserves over the last couple of years, I understand the deep understanding of this city is important. He and I have disagreed very publicly, but getting that deep understanding is important. And from Tom Potter, he evinced more than maybe any other mayor a commitment to the public interest. And my work over the last 10 years has been to empower people to the public interest.
Thank you. Now, for the remainder of the debate, the questions will be directed to all three candidates, who will each have 60 seconds to respond and, if they so desire, to rebut their fellow debaters. To Mr. Hales, Portland has jokingly been called a city where young people go to retire, but actual unemployment statistics hovering around 8.5% are enough to wipe the smile off any face. As mayor, what specific steps would you take to grow jobs, not just for young people, but for anyone seeking employment?
You know, Nancy and I live this issue. We have 5 children, a couple of them here between us, and then we seem to keep collecting additional ones because I say it takes Nancy to raise a village. So Kendall's here. So our house is constantly full of 20-somethings who are in their first job or looking for their first job or back in graduate school, and we're immersed in that environment thanks to them. And I've spent a lot of time with them and their friends who come here not to retire, but to build a life here. Now, it's a struggle because the unemployment rate is high. So there's some things I think we can do. I've proposed some specific strategies. You can find them on my website, charliehales.com. One of them is something I call Community Credit Portland, that will use the banking deposits of the city of Portland, as they do in North Dakota, to leverage loans for small businesses, because access to credit for young entrepreneurs is a key issue. It's a radical idea, but they've been doing it in that wild and crazy place of North Dakota for the last 95 years, and they have a 5.5% unemployment rate.
Thank you. Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, your response.
I would first say that I think young people often come here to create. And not all the time does that mean creating, working for a national bank. And sometimes it takes a little while to move forward, but I would actually say that one of our greatest distinctive strengths is attracting, creating, and retaining top talent. In the knowledge economy, globally competitive, we no longer merely compete for industry, we do compete for capital. Most importantly, we compete for talent. What can we do to win that competition for talent? One is keep the city a great place. That means not trading off our long-term legacy for short-term jobs plays. In terms of what we can do, I was named the 2011 Small Business Champion by the Oregon Microenterprise Network for the work we're doing, trying to pivot some of the economic development attention from just attracting out-of-state businesses to growing and cultivating homegrown businesses through capital access, through CEO mentorship, and helping homegrown businesses find access to new customers and new markets.
That is time. Ms. Brady, your response.
I could simply say, let's put a job on it, instead of let's put a bird on it. But let me go further. This is the reason that I get into the race. I feel like there's a myth here in Portland that says we can't have a progressive, livable city and a vibrant economy, and we actually have to break through that myth and commit to growing jobs, and that'll be my #1 priority. First of all, we have to streamline our permitting system. We have what I call a job-delaying permitting system. It has got to be much more quick, it has to be more affordable, and we can do it while maintaining our Portland ethic. Secondly, I think that there is an entrepreneurial energy that we need to release right here in Portland. We have a micro-manufacturing sector that's emerging in the fashion industry, the advanced metals manufacturing, think bicycle building, or food processing. I want to set up shared manufacturing centers so that we can scale some of these opportunities. I want to have account managers that work with some of our largest employers like OHSU. We have an opportunity to actually balance our Portland ethic with our jobs agenda, and I want to get it done.
That is done. All right. The next question, once again to Ms. Brady. Columbia River Crossing project managers have burned through 7 years and $144 million so far. Their efforts have produced an aesthetically uninspired bridge that is too low for the Coast Guard to accept, includes too many freeway lanes for transit backers to like, requires tolls and taxes that Washington voters might veto, and does nothing for freight rail. Now, please listen closely. This is a multi-part question.
That's fitting.
First, can this project, which seems, according to the committee, so badly mismanaged, be built in its current configuration? Second, what specific portions of the general CRC concept do you support or object to? And third, how would you use your position as mayor to achieve those outcomes?
First of all, it is about $150 million of government money. It is an example of government run amok. The easiest thing for me to have done would have been to align with my natural sustainability constituencies and actually oppose this project. But I stand with Governor Kitzhaber on this after doing quite a bit of homework. I support getting light rail to Vancouver. I support having the bicycle and ped opportunities between Oregon and Washington. I support reducing freight congestion. You have to remember that I'm a grocer, and I understand the freight congestion-related issues. I have also been a supporter of congestion-based tolling. I think we have an opportunity in Portland and Oregon to be leaders in congestion-based tolling, and we should do it now. We should start that now so that we can have reduced emissions and begin to fund this project. It will not be built in its current configuration. It will have to be skinnied down.
We are being asked to, the True Squad has a question once again about Part 1 regarding the specific portions of the general CRC you support or object to. What specific portions of the CRC concept do you support or object to? Oh, actually, no. Can this project, which seems so badly mismanaged, be built in its current configuration?
Well, I think we can get the light rail to Vancouver. I think we can get the ped and bike crossing pieces. I think we can reduce freight congestion. I think we can do the Marine Drive interchange part of this. At a more specific level, I actually think the Hayden Island piece of this puzzle is over-engineered, and we need to re-look at that component of it. There's a way to skinny this project down so it's fiscally responsible.
Okay. Mr. Hales, your response.
I think there are three positions on this issue, and there's only one of them that makes sense, I think, for the city of Portland. There's either bridge, baby bridge, or let's start over, or there's a way to make some version of this that makes sense and fit our values actually proceed, and that's where I am. No, I don't believe it can be built in its current condition, and I've said that since last June when I was first interviewed by Willamette Week. And in fact, that's been made clear recently when the Federal Aviation Administration says it can be no higher than this, and the Coast Guard says it can be no lower than that. So it cannot be built in its current configuration. But what the mayor of Portland should do, instead of saying build it and get run over, or don't build it and get ignored, is to be a constructive participant in redesigning this project. Specific pieces that I would keep: light rail and a main span that doesn't have to lift. Lose a $700 million interchange for $150 million worth of strip malls on Hayden Island, and figure out a better way to connect that neighborhood to the rest of the city.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, your response.
So first, I'd ask that we be a little careful in mischaracterizing the positions of others, but let me talk about my position. First, no, it can't go forward as is. Second, I'd prioritize seismic safety and freight mobility. And third, I would use my position as mayor to be committed to the facts. This project is broken largely because we have seen A-level political power applied to B- level math and engineering. And the pressure to say something that starts with yes is immense. The watershed moment for me in this campaign came before the AFL-CIO in the first major debate on this campaign. And we were asked roughly this question. And one candidate said, let's build this bridge, you guys. The other candidate said, I'll get this project started in the first year. And I said, how are you going to pay for it? And is it your most important transportation priority? Because if it isn't, you're not spending the money the way you ought to be. I will be the mayor to be committed to the facts, and I will apply that principle to this project.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. The next question to you as well. Several years ago, the City of Portland and Multnomah County forged an agreement known as Resolution A, which defined the services that each government would be responsible for. That once clear division of labor has since been compromised many times. What, if any, services currently in the city's portfolio really belong in the counties or vice versa, and what, as mayor, would you do about it?
Am I first?
Mr. Smith.
So I'm not going to unilaterally offer the ideas of which programs of the counties I would like to steal. I would say that probably the most prudent thing we can do is do much more joint budgeting with the county. And I'll give an example. For instance, as mayor, if I go out to my constituents in East Portland and I say we have to do something about crime, I'm going to add blank number of police officers, and we could use more. We have fewer per capita than similarly situated cities. And I say improve and increase your arrest rates, if improvement means increasing. And they, in fact, do that. What I am not recognizing is that will impact the public safety and prison budget and jail budget of the county and the state. So what I have to do is have a commitment to see the whole picture, not only the whole city, but all the bureaus within the city. So the most important thing, I think, is joint budgeting within the system, and then going to Kogan and others and saying, what do you want to divvy up? Do we still want to split homeless as we are now, or do we want to do that differently?
Thank you. Ms. Brady, your response?
There's clearly been some slippage around the contract, the social contract between the county and the city on some issues. For example, I would say rental assistance for homeless individuals being paid for out of the city general fund, or contributions to All Hands Raised, or supporting the sun systems. Do I think that we should stop doing that as a city because the county can't afford to pick that up? No, I don't. I think it's the city's responsibility to take on the issues of the day that actually provide strong safety net services to our city and county as a whole. Should we consider renegotiating that social contract between the city and the county? Yes. Should we evaluate how it's going? Absolutely. Should we consider shifting the deal on Resolution A? Absolutely. All of that has been part of our learning experience as a city, and we should continue to explore it and evaluate it.
Thank you. Mr. Hales, your response.
You know, one of the reasons why I'm excited about this prospect of serving you as mayor is I think we're going to have a good city council, and we have a very good Multnomah County Board of Commissioners. Chair Kogan is here. There may be other board members here. But I think we have a chance for an excellent relationship between two governments that must have one. So I'm enthusiastic about that. And yes, we've got all kinds of shared services, public safety, homelessness. Some of you may have driven on a city street over a county bridge and touched down on a city street to get here. So there's all kinds of stuff to work on. But there's a bigger issue here, and in bringing this up, I may be not only setting up a city club report, but volunteering for a second term if the voters are willing, and that is we have 8 local governments that affect the spots where we're sitting right now. Port of Portland Metro, TriMet, County of Multnomah, Multnomah Education Service District, City of Portland School District, and Portland Development Commission. That's a lot of local governments. Let's reconsider that for the next 50 years, not just a peace treaty between the city and the county.
Drew Scott weighs in. Mr. Hales, they're asking you to readdress the question one more time.
Do we need to redo Resolution A? Yes. Start with that, but then go to this bigger set of questions.
Does that answer your question? No. What, if any, services currently in the city's portfolio really belong in the counties or vice versa, and what would you do about it?
Under the current division of services, I think the city should take transportation and the county should be focused on homelessness. Right now we have the city taking care of homeless adults and the county taking care of homeless juveniles. We have to work this out both programmatically and financially. So if we're sticking with Resolution A for the short term, then we ought to try to go back to that common sense division of human services on one side and urban services on the other, understanding that public safety will remain a shared service for the near term.
Thank you. The next question to Mr. Hales again. A limited municipal budget suggests the city needs to concentrate its resources on core services and eliminate transfer or reduce non-essential programs. Recognizing that every service the city currently performs probably has a fan base somewhere, how would you determine what services should be eliminated? Give us an example of a city program you think has exceeded its shelf life.
The big challenge in the city budget is that during this recession, the council has made cuts of necessity, and those cuts have tended to go to the service level too much. And administration and overhead functions have been reduced not enough. So that the auditor has now revealed this pretty clearly in her report, showing that overall, averaged out across all the bureaus, there is this 6-to-1 ratio of service level workers to managers and overhead positions. The state is working towards 10-to-1. We should too. That's the real opportunity. So the budget opportunity is really managerial rather than which programs to lop off. I think we should look carefully at all of the special offices because there are functions that we must attend to, like equity in the river, but having a special office for healthy working rivers and a Bureau of Environmental Services is one example of possible programmatic overlap.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, your response.
Agree that middle management is one, maybe the first place to look. House Bill 2020 in the state that I carried on the House floor set an aspirational level of 11 to 1. I don't know that the city needs to have that level, but I think there are at least some savings there. Second, I think we have to look at major projects, including a sustainability center that seems to be financially unsustainable. I think that means we have to look at computer projects, which might include an I-11 system that we recently put in, but making sure that when we are negotiating computer projects, we have as much expertise on the city negotiating side as on the other side of the contracting table. I think we have to look at pausing and reviewing on the host of major projects we engage in going forward, and I'll leave my remaining 11, 10 to the next person. Really?
The Truth Squad
Just because I didn't use the whole time. If I would have used the other 10 seconds, you wouldn't have done that to
Mr.
me.
Smith, you will have 30
I was trying to keep this
seconds.
lighthearted. He over here is saying we're, saying mean things. I was just trying to be
30
nice.
seconds you have right now. Recognizing every service the city performs has a fan base. How would you determine what to eliminate, and give us an example of a city program you think has exceeded its shelf life?
So I gave a few examples. Let me say how I would determine. The first return on investment is the investment we're making not only a bigger or smaller project, but destined to save us or make us resources and make us money, save us money over time. Second, is it an essential service? Is there no other way to preserve it? Does the city have to do it because a nonprofit or the county or another local government can't do it? Those would probably be the two primary criteria.
Thank you. Ms. Brady, your response.
Since 1992, the auditor has suggested that our span of control is not right at City Hall, that we actually have to have more of a flatter organization. And I think our esteemed auditor will be thrilled to know that all three candidates have talked about that, changing that as part of their administration. I bring my organizational development background to that challenge. I have organized and reorganized our organizations successfully so that we can actually eliminate unnecessary middle management layers. Specifically in the Water Bureau, I think that we can see that there have been some non-mission critical projects that have been funded that shouldn't have been funded. The Water House or the Rose Festival headquarters. I bring my outcomes-oriented approach to budgeting to this challenge. Under my administration, we're going to set outcomes-based budgets citywide and then work and get the Bureau budgets lined up with the city goals. And I'm going to hold my entire council accountable to each other for achieving citywide goals, not just Bureau-oriented objectives.
Thank you. The next question, once again, to Ms. Brady. 6 years ago, City Club recommended that Portland phase out its unique pension and disability program for public safety officers known as FPD&R. Portland voters subsequently embraced part of that recommendation by placing new hires in Oregon's PERS program. City Club also recommended using the state's well-regarded workers' compensation program for new hires instead of the city's often criticized public safety disability program. That has not happened. What is your policy position on using an alternative to the city's disability plan?
Well, I have to first say that in 2006, we really were able to find community consensus involving both the officers and firefighters involved in the conversation, where we're able to achieve some very significant shifts. So then there's a current set of issues on the table right now that I believe Commissioner Saltzman and others are working on, and we may actually bring to the November ballot. We can see from the recent reports that we have less fraud in the system, and we actually have a system that is holding us more accountable. So I look at this as a liability that we're actually working on resolving. I want to point out that I think that one of the biggest hidden unfunded liabilities in this city right now is actually the Superfund. We have been avoiding this issue, and it may cost us up to $500 million. This is the type of issue, it's the elephant that is not in the room that needs to be in the room. So I appreciate the progress we're making on FPD&R, and we need to work on other unfunded liabilities as well.
Thank you. Mr. Hales.
I first think we all owe a debt of gratitude to Commissioner Saltzman, who's here today, who led that work in the city. It's not easy to make changes in public safety bureaus. I know this from my own experience, and I think we all owe him a debt of gratitude for taking those reforms through, as well as to the City Club for highlighting them. We're going to reach a ceiling in 2029 where the levy that we now have to pay for this is not going to be sufficient. So what we should start to do now is set aside revenues so that we can drop the peak of that curve and make sure that we stay under that levy. I think our state treasurer, Ted Wheeler, can be very helpful to us as a resource as we come up with fiscally prudent investments that help us amortize that liability. When it comes to the workers' comp side of it, 90% of the cost of this system is the pension and 10% is disability. So certainly we should look at the workers' comp option, but we've got to credit Commissioner Salzman. He got 90% of the problem at least under a solution.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I think when FPD&R reforms were moved, there was a contemplation that we would move the new PERS payments and FPD&R payments, to the general fund. That hasn't happened, and I think as the general fund recovers, we have to look to make that shift to alleviate people's property tax bills. Second, if we are going to consider additional changes, one example might be that right now a 26-week pay period is 364 days. If you time it right, you can get a 27th week. But even the firefighters will say we can get around the table and figure out an answer to that question, but don't use it as an opportunity to undercut collective bargaining generally, but we can find ways to make it more sensible. And then the key is our approach at getting people around the table, recognizing we are all in this together, and also recognizing that police officers and firefighters risk their lives in ways that I don't, and in ways that most people in this room don't.
Thank you. The next question to Mr. Smith. Portland's water rates have increased every year since 1991. The Big Pipe project is now finished, and Portland won a variance of federal and state treatment standards for cryptosporidium, making costly new investments for water treatment unnecessary. Despite this, recent reports suggest that Portland's water and sewer rates could double in the next 5 years. Why are rate increases vastly exceeding inflation, and what actions would you propose to control them?
So first, we have to make sure that water and sewer rates go to pay for water and sewers. I think that's a general principle that I want to compliment my colleagues on. I think all of us have embraced that principle. I also think we have to be aggressive not only as things go along, but at the front end. I want to compliment Commissioner Fritz, who might have been patient zero among elected officials in saying that we should resist a federal government asking us for expensive water treatment plants for cryptosporidium that we don't have. And I think we have to be diligent very early in those processes to make sure we don't do it. A third is we might actually need to look for opportunities either to lower rates or maybe to create a rainy day fund. Part of a challenge is that the dynamic is if we raise rates every time there is a need and then we pay for that need and rates stay high, we keep the rates high and then use that money for something else. What I think we should consider is a rainy day fund if the need alleviates and we don't take a vote to lower rates, put that money in a rainy day fund with very specific cabined requirements.
Thank you. Ms. Brady?
In 2004, as I said before, I sat on the independent review panel on whether or not to bury the reservoirs. And we knew then that we were going to run into an issue with this LT2 without going too far into the weeds with the EPA. And we told the council then that we needed to get ahead of that so that we could receive some kind of waiver or delay on that project. And I believe that we didn't get ahead of it quickly enough. We were able to get the water treatment plant actually deferred or canceled altogether. But we are in our water rates currently paying for preparations for actually covering the reservoirs. I would not have set the budget up to do that. I would have been much more aggressive about working to reduce our water rates directly by negotiating with EPA on this issue. We're looking at water and sewer rates that could skyrocket beyond where they are right now. And again, we have to wake up to the issue of the Portland Harbor. The City of Portland needs to provide more leadership with industry and the port so that we can actually achieve a community consensus about the best option. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hales, your response.
Corleen, you and I can talk afterwards.
First, I want to commend Eileen and the other members of that review panel for coming up with the right recommendation. I think it's a very good thing that we didn't spend money to resolve a risk that we didn't have. Then I mentioned this need, and I think we all agree on it, the need to go through the budget very carefully with an eye towards overhead. That applies in the utility bureaus, not just the general fund bureaus. So the same thing's true there. We need to look at the shape of the organization and look at administration and overhead. And of course, yes, we do all agree that we need to stop the non-water expenditures, not just the notorious ones like the Waterhouse and paying for a Rose Festival headquarters, but the Bureau recently spent $100,000 republishing a history of the Water Bureau. Those kinds of assumptions that the money's always there need to change. And then there's a bigger issue, which is the wholesale contracts. One of the strengths I'll bring to this office is good relationships with our suburban neighbors, and we'll need them because they're not happy customers right now, and if they leave those wholesale contracts, our rates will go up even more.
Thank you. Mr. Hales, the next question for you. According to the city auditor, 24 cents of every local property tax dollar now goes to fund urban renewal projects instead of going to the general funds of Portland, Multnomah County, and Portland schools. 10 years ago, it was only 16 cents of every dollar. In your opinion, what has Portland gained or sacrificed from this growth, and in what direction would you take Portland's urban renewal?
It's time to make good on the promise to the whole community of what urban renewal is supposed to do. And that is, it's supposed to take an area with not much real estate value, like, say, the Pearl District, build infrastructure, sell bonds to pay for that, pay off the bonds with the new development, and then confer all that value on the tax rolls for the county and the school districts and the city. I disagree with the current council for rolling over those districts and incurring new debt. We have to declare victory and confer that tax benefit on everyone. So we need to reform our approach, and I will look at foreshortening the length of every one of those districts. Some of them we can, some of them we cannot. And then we need to make PDC more of an engine of neighborhood economic development, something that Mayor Adams has begun, and I appreciate it. But we have to make good on that deal, that urban renewal works, but it has to work for everyone by coming to an end when the district has accomplished its goals.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, Charlie gave an excellent answer. I would agree with everything he said. All I would add is I think there are chances we have to look early and middle and late at partnerships to make sure we are making those decisions not in a vacuum, that we recognize that doesn't only impact our people, but also the people who have to budget for our people. For instance, direct county services and state services that are already approaching bankruptcy with every new budget. And we have to engage in those conversations early. I'm honored to be the one candidate here who's endorsed both by a member of the current City Council and a member of the current County Commission and a plurality of the Oregon current legislature. I think using those partnerships could be helpful. Another is additional transparency. Something I've been working on in the state for some years now, we passed budget transparency in the state, is having more inclusion in the process, not only with government and not only with people who want a set of projects within an urban renewal zone, but also people generally, so we get better input.
Thank you. Ms. Brady?
We've gained a lot from urban renewal districts. We've gotten projects completed in the Pearl District, for instance, as Charlie pointed out. But we have a PDC that has a mission of job creation and a set of tools that's a real estate development, primarily real estate development to deal with blight set of tools. The tools don't match the mission. Should we sunset districts on time? Absolutely. Should we negotiate with the county so that actually the increment is shared more fairly, like we're doing at this education district? Absolutely. But the key issue is that we need new forms of financing economic development. We can't continue to do business as usual. In this case, TIF financing is declining. We need a new stream of revenue. So I proposed an economic development corporation where we actually take the real estate that the city owns, put it together, manage it well, and have the increment from that actually fund job development in and outside of urban renewal districts.
Thank you. And at this point in the debate, we will now move to the final portion of the program. 2-minute closing statements from each candidate. We will begin with Mr. Smith. Your 2-minute closing.
I'm running for mayor because we are all in this together. I'm running for the young women prostituting themselves on 82nd Avenue and to end the sex trafficking that puts them there. I'm running for the homeless families on the street in Portland with parents who can't find jobs and children suffering from hunger and neglect. I'm running for the addicted, those who have burned their friends and burned their families and don't think they can make it back to healthy lives. For the many good police who want to stop the killing and end the violence. For the firefighters who save lives and risk their own. For Portland's underappreciated teachers who put their very being into teaching and watch as we devalue their work, undervalue their schools, don't provide the books their students need, and don't repair the buildings they work in. For Portland's young, innovative entrepreneurs who could use a bit of help finding capital and access to new markets and new customers. For the students who are falling behind classmates every summer when they don't have a ticket to equestrian camp. For the guy who wants to be able to get to work without dodging a 12-inch deep pothole and fearing public transit. For the people who don't care that much about politics and just want to get their city to work. For the moms and dads who need childcare near the school where their work, their commuting triangle is a bit narrower. I'm running for a generation who loves this beautiful city and can't afford to take it for granted. We are all in this together. I believe in a problem-solving city government. This race is about the city working better, and working for more people. I respect the other candidates. They are good people. I am running a campaign that funds no opposition polling, runs no negative advertising, because we are all in this together. At our best, Portland, Oregon can do things better than other places. At our best, no place is better. I'm Jefferson Smith, and I'm running for mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Brady. Your 2-minute closing.
I love Portland, but the reality is it's a great place to live, but it can be a tough place to find a job or make a living. And if you're a parent like me, you've struggled wondering if your children are actually going to get a good education, or when they're grown, whether they can actually stay here. And if you're a business person like me, you've worried about whether you need to lay people off. And if you are a city commissioner, you should be very concerned because you know that city revenues are directly tied to our struggling economy. I've said before, there's a myth here in Portland that we can't have a progressive, livable city and a vibrant economy, and I will help us break through that myth and commit to growing the jobs that we need here. I was honored to receive the endorsement of the Portland Tribune earlier this week, and they said, Brady has risen to the top of the 22 candidate field because she understands the necessity for a more vibrant economy in Portland to support this city's celebrated quality of life. Brady's professional and volunteer experiences support her argument that she can bring the right mix of skills to the job. I have created broad-based coalitions for social, environmental, and economic change throughout my entire life, and I'll continue to do so as mayor. My campaign itself is evidence of the coalition of labor, business, environmentalists, and leaders of community of color that I can put together. As mayor, I'll bring my entrepreneurial focus to the 4 clear priorities that I've set for my administration: creating jobs and growing our economy, having an accountable and respected police force, creating a 21st century school system together, and having a city hall that delivers cost-effective, friendly, core city services. I talked about great cities. Think again about great cities. In order to have all of these things that we dream of, we have to have this thriving economic center. Portland is a good city. It can be a great city. We need the civic leadership to pull this broad coalition of leaders together to get us there. I look forward to being that leader for our community.
Thank you. And we end with Mr. Hales, your closing statement.
Thank you all for your attention here today. Thank you to the City Club for being this forum, and my commendations to my colleagues for here and throughout this campaign conducting a positive discourse and a solid discussion among our community. And I really like Eileen and Jefferson. If we were running for class president, I'd be pretty likely to vote for one of them. But this is not that popularity contest. We're running for most likely to succeed. I've succeeded in the last 10 years in the private sector, turning livability into prosperity, showing other cities how to do what we've done, getting more cars off the road, using less gas, building livable communities, making it easier for people to get around, growing jobs in those cities and in Portland. And in my own company, we've tripled our workforce, hired a lot of smart young people from all over the country who now live all over Portland. I did that with team leadership, and that's also the job of the mayor. That's the only way you can succeed in our weird form of government. You're not a CEO. You're not a committee chair. You succeed only if you know how to lead among equals. We're a great city. I love Portland, and I know that we have challenges that we can take on. We must work on our local economy. It needs help. We not only need to fix the relationship with our business community, but create a culture where people invest, create jobs, and stay. We need to get the riches of our city to East Portland and other underserved communities so that way more people have a job and live in a livable neighborhood. We need to take on the problem of police shootings and restore our commitment to community policing. We need to fully restore our city's largest jewel, Forest Park. And the true reason we're here, schools. We have to have great public schools in every city, in every part of our city. Which one of us is most likely to succeed? The Oregonian and Vera Katz and others looked at this question and picked me. I hope you will too. I'm Charlie Hales. I'm ready to lead on day one, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
And that concludes today's debate. I'd like to ask Melody to return to the stage, and now you've been a great audience. Let's give the debaters a big round of applause.
I want to thank our panelists today, Lori Irish Bauman, Corleen Kraft, and Pat McCormick. Thank you also to our masterful timekeeper, Tony Yacarino. A special thank you to our moderator, Patrick Preston, and of course our greatest appreciation to the debaters, Eileen Brady, Charlie Hales, and Jefferson Smith. Please join us Wednesday for U.S. Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner and next week for the Attorney General debate. We are adjourned.